Hello, this is Father Ben, and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what we did in the month of November in Children's Chapel. We continued to tell some of our favorite Old Testament stories, starting with Jonah and the whale, where Jonah does not want to listen to God and decides to run away from God. And ends up in the belly of a whale, where he prays to God and God saves him. But in the end, he does listen to what God asked him to do, and he goes to Nineveh to warn the Ninevites to change their ways. And we talked about how it's important to listen to God, and sometimes following God's ways are not easy, but that doesn't mean that we're not supposed to do them anyway. Continuing along that theme of courage, we heard two stories about people who were told they could only pray to a king or a statue, and they refused. They wanted to pray to their God, and God watched over them. The story of Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel, for refusing to pray only to the king, is thrown into the lion's den, but God shuts the mouths of the lions, and the next morning the king finds him totally unscathed, not even a scratch on his body. And that it took a lot of courage to do what Daniel did, but it was courage girded by the belief in a God who can do anything. And the same with the story of the fiery furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told they had to worship only this gold statue, and they refused to do that, and were thrown into a scalding fire. But when the king checked on them, there were not 3 but 4 people in the fire, and one seemed like an angel. And when they left the fire, they were not only not burned, they didn't even smell like smoke, that God had protected them. And the king knew that their God was indeed a powerful God. And we talked about how much courage it must have taken to stand up and do something like that, but also how amazing God must have been to be able to save them. We also told the story of Joseph in the coat of many colors, the story of Joseph, who was a dreamer and incited quite a bit of jealousy from his brothers, so much so that they gave him away, and he ended up in jail. Well, he ended up in a faraway land, and then eventually in jail, and eventually working for the king. But God never gave up on him, and that God always was with him until in the end, he's reunited with his family, and all of the pieces of his story allowed him to be able to take care of his family when they were in need. And so we learned that God is always with us, and sometimes things don't work out the way we want, but that doesn't mean that God's not part of our lives and working amazing things in our lives. So that's a little bit about what we did in a chapel this month, and next month we'll turn our attention to Jesus and the birth of Jesus. So we'll talk a little bit about that next time. Thank you, and have a great Advent and a Merry Christmas.